wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I hope you're having a great week so far. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended podcast, and also the founder of the Blended Pledge. And I am excited to be back in my home studio with you today for Thoughts and Coffee. And I'm going to be bringing up Will from Tractor Supply, and we're going to be learning all sorts of things, not only about their supply chain, but we're going to be talking climate change, and there is so much to talk about. So we should get to it, but let me introduce you to our show sponsor first. Are you ready to find your people? If you are struggling to find a supply chain community of like-minded professionals where you can level up, network, learn about best practices from experts in supply chain, professional development, and marketing, look no further. We created the Secret Society of Supply Chain to provide a safe space, a community for everyone in supply chain. We offer unique opportunities for everyone to connect and grow in our three distinct value-packed communities: the supply chainers, women in supply chain, and the creative room. From the learn at your own pace, content-rich approach of the supply chainers to the empowering community-focused space of women in supply chain and the marketing mastermind of the creative room, we mean it when we say there's truly a place for everyone. So head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com to explore which community was made for you. All right, let's talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode. It's episode 408, wherever you listen to the show. And I met with Ryan from Relish, and we talked all about what they are doing in supply chain. We talked about how technology companies overpromise and sometimes underdeliver, and you're not going to want to miss this particular episode. This is a part one of a three-part series that we are doing with Relish. Plus, I asked him why he picked the name Relish for his company. Now, you're not going to want to miss that. So head over there and check it out. All right, what else do we have? We've got a brand new episode of Blended. Now we're talking about networking etiquette, and I had three dynamic ladies join me for this episode to talk all about what's right, what's wrong, how do we build relationships while we are networking, and what that etiquette looks like. So head over to blendedpledge.org, because we have moved the Blended podcast over to blendedpledge.org, and check out episode 44. We're also over on Apple and Spotify. Next, we put out Supply Chain by the Numbers for May 2024. You're not going to want to miss this, because we break down this month's key figures impacting the supply chain world. So the link is in the comments. If you're over on my personal LinkedIn, I will update it with the links after the show, but make sure that you go check it out, because there's some pretty cool numbers in there. Next, I don't know if you saw my post last week, but I finally was able to dance with a robot. I mean, I have to work on my robot skills, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to join Digit at Manhattan's Momentum last week. And so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you missed it, the link is over in the comments as well. All right. Last but not least, in June, I am headed to go and meet up with the Forum for International Trade Training. Now, since 2008, I have been working with them in a variety of different capacities. And since 2015, I've been on the board. And June is going to be my last board meeting with the Forum for International Trade Training. If you have not heard about them, you definitely want to go and check them out. They've got tons and tons of really good training when it comes to importing, exporting, international trade. I've included a little bit of a video so that you can go and check out who they are and what they do. But it's been my pleasure to serve on that board, and looking forward to see what the new board members can do. Oh, one more thing. We've got a Woman in Supply Chain blog with Maria Villablanca. If you don't know who Maria is, definitely go check her out on LinkedIn. But first, check out her Woman in Supply Chain blog as we talk about her journey, and she helps you to find your passion and your tribe. All right, that is enough for me. It's time to bring up Will. Good morning, Will. How are you?
Morning, Sarah. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I work for Tractor Supply Company. We're the U.S.'s largest rural and lifestyle retailer. And I also volunteer my time for an association that's associated with warehousing professionals called WERC. It's work, and we have our conference coming up in 2 weeks in Dallas, and we're getting ready for that too.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds amazing. You've got like 600 to 700 people, I think, that are going to be
That's right. Yeah,
in 2
yeah.
weeks.
It's not as large as some of the big trade shows, but it's really highly curated content. It's a lot of practitioners and experts kind of sharing best practices. It's a really cool environment.
Ooh, I love that. Maybe I need to be there for next year. But I want to let everybody know you and I only met, I think, about 3 weeks ago in Atlanta.
Yes.
And I think you came up to me and you were like, "Hey, I just want to say hi." And I was like, "How would you like to come on Thoughts and Coffee?"
Yeah.
And here we are.
It's funny how those things happen. That's right. Yeah, I think we were down there looking at some forecasting and replenishment software. That's interesting space for us, especially. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, for anybody watching, I want to know where you're watching from. So make sure to hit up the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions throughout the show for Will, make sure you put them in the comments as well. I'm checking my personal as well as the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn. All right, let's get to the poll of the week. So the question that we asked everybody, how has your company adapted to previous supply chain disruptions? Now, we had almost 100 votes on this one. 43% of you said diversified procurement. 33% of you said alternative logistics processes. 21% of you said invested in backup inventory. That is interesting because that costs a lot of money. And 3% of you said predicted risks using AI. So only 3% have used AI to help mitigate those risks. What did you think about this, Will?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and the larger responses there, I can point to experiences here at Tractor Supply during the pandemic, and then shortly after the pandemic, where we did all three of those. From logistics process and understanding kind of where your bottlenecks are. As specifically in the farm and ranch space, as a farm and ranch retailer. A lot of folks during the pandemic couldn't go out and spend their money on services, so they stayed home and they invested in DIY projects. And so our business grew considerably during that time period. And so we really faced this kind of surge in demand, and that created capacity constraints. So we had to get really creative with our distribution and transportation network. But the other ones, like in terms of making sure that you have adequate safety stock, but not too much safety stock. Those also played quite a role in that growth period for us. And now I think, like a lot of retailers, we're leaning into the AI, leaning into machine learning, and trying to find an edge there.
Yeah, I think a lot of the conversations that I've been having at conferences over the last couple of weeks have been about AI or Gen AI. AI has been around for a long time. There's been a lot of companies that have been looking at AI for almost 10 years or so. It's the Gen AI component that is new. And people are still trying to figure out how to use that. I think that 3% around AI is obviously going to grow. Like if we were going to ask the same people that question, maybe a year from now, I think that 3% is going to grow quite significantly.
Yeah, I think it makes the access to artificial intelligence, which has been around for a while, but it's always been sort of in the background. But these like large language models where anybody can go in and ask a question and get a thoughtful answer. It's sort of democratizing the technology, which is just going to increase over time, I think.
Yeah, I think the one comment that I would make there is I was talking about digital hygiene or cyber hygiene. And one of the things that we have to be careful with, like ChatGPT or something like that, is giving out proprietary information on ChatGPT, because a lot of times we're putting that information in and we're asking for an answer back. But if it's proprietary information, we're not realizing that we're putting it out to everybody on the World Wide Web.
Yeah. You should definitely be careful of what you put in there. I wouldn't copy and paste sensitive information and say, "Hey, analyze this for me."
Right?
I would maybe be a little bit more general. In terms of closed, secure private applications, the rise of that sort of Gen AI approach is only going to increase. Looking at ways, not publicly, but like within an organization, just using natural language to ask a question and get a quick answer versus going and pulling data and building a pivot table and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say hi to Raj and Charles over on my personal LinkedIn. Raj is from Ohio and Charles is coming in from Texas. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Now, Will, this is the time of the episode that I ask you for a bit of a market update. You talk to a lot of supply chain professionals, you go to some conferences, you're looking at technology. Everybody is focused on risks, disruption.
Mhm.
How do we use technology to be more efficient, improve processes? So, what are you hearing from the market? What kind of conversations are you having? What are people worried about?
Yeah, no, it's great. So, thinking about this moment in time, kind of where we are in the year, we're coming out of, for a lot of like retail supply chains, we're coming out of the big push for returns and
Okay.
processing returns, which is a big part of that sort of Q1, Q2 timeframe for retailers. And so there are a lot of different organizations out there, be it in the technology space or just traditional operations, that are helping organizations process the mountain of returns that happen this time of year. We don't do a ton of returns at Tractor Supply. A lot of our products are consumables, usable type products. But I know that for a lot of the hard goods and soft line retailers, that's big. So I've talked about that quite a bit with some folks. And then the other piece that has been a theme this year, not just at Tractor Supply, but in other supply chain organizations that I speak with, is just the sort of back to basics mentality, getting the fundamentals right in terms of forecast accuracy, that sort of metric to lead all other
Mhm.
metrics. If you can get your forecast, your demand and your supply synchronized, then everything else kind of is a lot easier. And whether it's just through fundamentals or through the use of new technology, I think that that forecast accuracy piece is something that I've heard a lot of this year, more so than usual.
Really? Okay. Well, and I feel like you're right. We have to go back to those fundamentals. We got to go back to move forward because I think, the pandemic really didn't really give us a lot of time to breathe, or supply chain professionals a lot of time to breathe. Now we have a little bit of time to do that. You've got lots of technology. Things are changing at a super fast pace. I actually put some posts out last week about how fast things are changing, and you actually cannot forecast much more than 4, maybe 6 months because of how fast everything is changing. Or maybe it was more of a plan because I was listening to somebody from Google last week talking about how
Mhm.
fast things are changing.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, and your time horizon and your accuracy is going to be different. I mean, when you look out that far in advance, 6 months plus, you're looking for a different level of accuracy than if you're trying to forecast the next 4 weeks. But yeah, I think you just hit on the head. It's like we went through this sort of like crazy 2 3 year period through the pandemic, and then coming out of the pandemic, and then we've had some supply chain disruptions, Suez Canal, Baltimore Bridge, all those things.
mhm.
But yeah, I think largely everyone's just trying to like settle into what is the new normal, what are the new sort of consumer spending habits, and how do we respond to that as a supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So many big questions, and there's a lot of technology out there that can help in a variety of different ways, and so many things for people to think about. All right, let's get to our first article. So, what we want to talk about is the climate crisis and how global supply chains are going to face $25 trillion in losses. Now, I don't know about you, but I read through this particular article, and the losses are between 3.75 trillion and 25 trillion in 2060. And it's because of the climate crisis. What they're focusing more on is the heat of the world and how the heat is actually increasing. And what that means to supply chains is that operational interruptions are going to happen because of excess heat. And I think they even gave an example of it being just 7 degrees more is
Mhm.
actually going to cost supply chains a whole bunch of money. Plus, obviously, the health of the workers and things like that. But what they also talked about was crop failures and labor slowdowns as well as part of the disruptions. So, Will, you're in the heart of supply chain. What did you think about this? Is it something that you're thinking about? Is this something that you're talking about as a team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just macro level climate change and the change in climate patterns is absolutely top of mind for all supply chain practitioners. At least it should be, right? Because we're going to have to respond, and we can either choose to get ahead of it and plan for it, or we can react to it. As a 10 or 15 years ago, as a operations supervisor, unloading containers in the summer in South Carolina, I can tell you firsthand that heat, the impact of heat on supply chain team members is real. And so if that is something that is going to increase over time, then yeah, we're going to have to invest in ways to mitigate that. But yeah, and also when I took a peek at the article, I also think about it from the farm and ranch side, obviously, because I work for Tractor Supply, and the impact on crops and what that does, when hay doesn't fully, come in as planned, then that changes, what we feed our animals and vice versa. So there are just different elements to climate change, I think, both from the HSE side, but also, just in terms of the agricultural business and that whole economy.
Well, yeah, and supply chain really is about moving product, right? It's
Mhm.
about sourcing product, buying that product, moving that product. If you can't have the product because of crop failures, that's definitely going to slow down supply chains. But also, if the teams can't function, like you said, I've been in a container in the middle of the summer. It's not pleasant. It's not easy. They have to take breaks. They need
Yeah.
water. Um, and if the world is going to increase by 7 degrees, just think about how much longer that's going to take.
Oh yeah, yeah. Tractor Supply has invested for years in our sustainability program, where we're looking to offset carbon footprint. The renewable energy sources. We just opened up our 10th distribution center in Maumelle, Arkansas. Very proud to say it's a Gold LEED certified facility,
Mhm.
which means we've taken some very careful steps to make sure that it is as energy efficient as possible. And there's also things that we're doing to conserve water. So yeah, we're definitely playing our part, but yeah, all of us, not just this organization, but supply chain across the board. I think that this climate change, evolution is real, and it's going to impact us, and so we should be ready for it.
Well, and the lights in your office.
Yeah, yeah. You saw a panic there for a minute. I was like, "Oh no!"
I was like, we may as
Hey,
well talk about the
but
elephant in the
what a
room.
timely situation. We're conserving energy here. I didn't move a muscle for 5 minutes, and my lights turned off.
It's really funny because that happened on a LinkedIn Live last Monday.
Yeah,
And so we're doing things to conserve that energy and help with the climate crisis.
that's
And then
funny.
when it happens, it's totally timely and we have to talk about it. So I love
Yeah.
that. One of the other things that they talked about was collaboration between countries. If India, for example, they use an example of India, if the heat increases in India and it affects those food crops like we were talking about, it also affects food sustainability in the
Hmm.
US as well. And so if we think about where we get our food sources from, all over the world globally, if those crops are affected, they actually affect our US food markets as well. And so they're talking about collaboration and coming together as countries to figure out what that's going to look like so there aren't any sensitivities within the food market.
Yeah, there's a real element of the global economy there. I mean, and that's been around for a long time. But if you question whether or not we live in a global economy, all I would challenge you to do is look at something that you purchased from a store and
Mm-hmm.
look to see where it was made. And if it was made in the U.S., that's great. But the chances are that the raw materials that were sourced for that product are not from the U.S. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
all interconnected. And yeah, we definitely need some collaboration on that front as well, for sure.
Absolutely. I want to say hi to James over on my personal LinkedIn. He's coming in from Singapore. Now, let's get into the second part of our conversation. Now, I'm going to bring up Tractor Supply website. If you're not familiar with Tractor Supply, go and check them out. We're putting the link in the comments. Now, Will, the reason why we're bringing up the website, not necessarily an article, is because we want to talk about how you're thinking about supply chain. So, talk to us about what supply chain means to you and your teams. How are you thinking about it? What are you prioritizing for 2024?
Yeah, sure. So 2024, very similar to my response to your first question. It's a lot about back to basics, getting some of the fundamentals right. We obviously we my team and the teams that we work with, we're here to synchronize supply and demand as much as possible. The consumer behavior right now is a little bit tough to track, and so we're trying to make sure that we don't over index on any particular product category. We're seeing, some consumers are feeling a little bit of a pinch on their wallet, and so some of the more recreational, bigger ticket type items, maybe we need to take a look at our inventory levels and the way that we're flowing that product. But largely, Tractor Supply is kind of like a grocery store for animals, both your companion animals and your more livestock type animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the rural lifestyle continues to grow in our country, we're going to have to continue to keep up with that demand. And so we think about it in terms of flow. We think about it in terms of capacity. We forecast at multiple different levels and multiple different time horizons to make sure that we're synchronized. We collectively, as a supply chain organization, meet weekly in a pretty lengthy, you could call it a SNOP type meeting, where we're making sure that not only are we in good shape for the next few weeks, but we're also looking out to the next season. Seasonally, Tractor Supply sees a peak in the spring and in the fall, so we're definitely planning against those horizons. And I think that for us, there's absolutely a flavor of kind of cautious investment in some of those newer technologies. It's tough to pick the winning horse right now, because there's so many different startups and small services that are claiming that they've got ML or AI figured out. And so I think that it's great to kind of take them all in and understand what they have to offer, but also be sure that you're doing your homework and that you're making solid use cases before you go invest. So I think those are some of the elements. And then, I already kind of mentioned our newest DC, which has got some cool mechanization, some cool automation in it. So that's kind of what's going on here.
What kind of automation are you doing? Dancing robots like the one I just danced with?
No, we don't have any robots dancing, not yet, at least. We're doing some goods to person technology, and then we're trying to mechanize some of those more repeatable automated tasks, just like handling boxes. We're trying to do some things there to remove the burden away from team members so that they can go do more value added activities.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Now, you must have, if you're a grocery store for farms, then you must have a ton of SKUs that you have to manage, which is crazy. And hopefully you're not using Excel for that. What has surprised you in 2024 as far as supply chain, or maybe forecasting, or even looking at technology for you and your teams?
I think, I don't know if it so much surprised me, but it just continues to impress me on the data side of things. How much data is becoming available to us? The ability for end users like myself. So I'm an operator. I'm an end user. I'm not an IT person. I now have access to mountains of data that I never had access to before. And so I think the challenge there is great. We've been asking for it, and now it's here, and that's phenomenal. But now, what do you do with it? How do you make sense of that data and turn all that information, which doesn't add any value inherently on its own? How do you turn it into actionable insights? Whether you're kind of describing what has happened or you're trying to make predictions on what will happen, that is a huge focus for almost every organization out there. But certainly, we're no exception.
Yeah, I mean, the data part is huge when you talk about going back to foundations, right?
Yeah.
Having your data lake and your data foundations
Mhm.
in order. I've been talking about that a lot recently because, like you said, if you've got more data coming in, first of all, you need to be able to mine it. You need to make sure that you separate the good data, the bad data, and you need to be able to use it for those actionable insights, especially when it's making it harder and harder to forecast.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of I guess red herrings in there, or things that you might think are a new trend, but really it was just an outlier. And so you have to kind of figure out, okay, at what point do we overfit our models, and at what point do we smooth out our models, and where's that fine line?
Mm.
And then just the overwhelming element of producing models and producing visualizations. It's great, and for people that are supply chain nerds, we're in heaven because we now have more information to play with. But when you get 100 different dashboards in your inbox, you're like, which one is the one I need to look at, right?
Yeah. Well, and you need time to be able to do that as well,
Yeah.
which is what technology is giving us back. All right. Let's get to our last article. We've got a couple of minutes on this one. Now, we're talking about the failure of Domino's 30-minute delivery guarantee. Now, I don't know if all of you remember. I'm sure Will and I remember the 30-minute guarantee with Domino's. It was back in, I think, the 90s or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this particular article up is because there are some correlations to logistics. There's some correlations to last mile delivery. And they're talking about when they implemented this 30-minute delivery guarantee, they really picked pizza over lives. There was a lot of accidents that happened because when the drivers are focused on speed, they get tunnel vision and they actually don't pay attention to the world around them. And there was actually a company called Delivery Services Negligence Litigation Group, which I think is still around, which I wanted to bring to everybody's attention because a lot of supply chain organizations or organizations in general are doing last mile deliveries to their consumers. And so this is definitely something that we need to think about. What did you think about this, Will? I mean, at first, I think you were like, what does this have to do with supply chain? And I was like, well, it kind of has everything to do with supply chain because we keep putting pressure on our logistics teams, our supply chain teams, our delivery teams for speed to deliver to
Mhm.
consumer. And I'm kind of saying, well, look what we did in the 1990s. Let's, be a little bit careful about how fast we want everything.
To be honest with you, when I took a peek at that article, the first thing I thought about was that little character. What was his name? I can't remember his name, but it was that little red guy, the Domino character.
Oh,
Um,
no, I don't
okay,
remember.
I'll look it up later and I'll send you a note. Yeah, so it's all about trade-offs, right? Obviously, if one trade-off of speed to within the last mile, speed to the consumer is safety, you need to take a hard look at that. I don't think anyone would advocate for dangerous
Right.
last mile delivery, whether it's a pizza or something you've purchased from a website. But it really is about trade-offs. I don't necessarily think of last mile as, I think I've heard it phrased in the past as sort of the Amazon effect. Like, how do we get as fast as we possibly can to
Mm-hmm.
compete with, this massive fulfillment network? And I do believe that there is a right sizing of fulfillment to meet consumer preference. So if it's all about the customer, then making sure that that consumer sort of has a say so in what level of service they're being offered, and to the extent you can offer different pricing arrangements for those different levels of service. Like, sometimes, honestly, when I order something, I don't need it today, I don't need it
Right.
tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
7 days from now, no more than that probably, but like, I'm good. And if maybe I get a little bit of a discount because of that, then hey, great. So I think it's less about reaching this ultimate, like, instantaneous fulfillment goal, and it's more about aligning the customer's preference to the service. And if you have a menu of options there, and as a sort of a omni-channel kind of retailer with a pretty significant brick and mortar presence, I would say that we lean heavily into this idea of buy online, pick up in store, where not only are we making the products available within close proximity to the consumer, but we're also, um, giving them that sort of service and that sort of customer attention that they would expect out of a store visit. But if they want to come in and leave with what they ordered, that's cool. We've got the lockers, we've got staging areas. We'll come to the curb,
Nice.
we'll load your truck, all that good stuff. But if they want to come in and they have a question about some other product, then we can answer that question as well. So for the brick and mortar retailers, I'd say that buy online, pick up in store is a great alternative. But then on the true direct fulfillment to consumer, I'd say it's about right sizing the need versus what the capability is.
Well, and also the repercussions on your brand.
Yeah.
So whether you're using an outside carrier to do those deliveries or anything like that, it's your brand, it's your product that's being delivered. There goes those lights. And so just remember that. And I think it's part of the education of the consumer that we need to do as supply chain professionals, as organizations, to say, hey, speed is great, but we also want to make sure that we are being kind to our drivers as
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
that we're not putting too much pressure on them. All right. Just before we go, I want to let everybody know where I'm going to be So June 5th through 6th, I am going to be at Home Delivery World. I'm going to be recording podcasts on site. I'm also going to be recording some exclusive content for the Secret Society of Supply Chain. So if you're not signed up to the Supply Chainers group, we are going to have some really cool content coming out in June as well. And then June 9th through 11th, I'm going to be in New Orleans for the TMSA Elevate Conference. And I can't wait to see everybody there. We are one of the sponsors of the Wellness Room, which I'm super excited about because that's something that I'm very passionate about. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all your insights. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this was great. I'm glad I ran into you down in Atlanta. This was really fun. Yeah, I appreciate the time.
Awesome. We'll have to have you back. Thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll see you next week.